Hello, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to week three. It's a scorcher out there. It's like 85 degrees outside. Hopefully you are not shut in all day and don't look at this video until the weather is worse, because everyone should enjoy the sunshine. This week's video, we're going to go over a couple of things from last week, or I guess processes for the class, then go over this week's reading, and it should be all done pretty quickly. Please watch through the whole video. It will be helpful. First things first, very important, no using ChatGPT. I noticed one person who used it, they got a 0 on their assignment. You cannot do that under any circumstances. If you are using ChatGPT for your discussion board posts, it's a real bad sign. Those are only 200 words each. Just do the reading and process a short response. If you use ChatGPT for your major assignments, which are like half of the grade for the class, you will get a 0 on those assignments. You will not get the opportunity to redo them. You just get a 0. Without one of those assignments, the best you can do in the class is like a C. Without both, you fail automatically. So I strongly suggest you stop using ChatGPT, or if you use it and you get away with it in discussion board, you might not get away with it in a major assignment. It's not worth the risk, I promise. Next up, let's share some screens. Okay. So I went through and left comments on everyone's discussion board for week 2. You should be able to see those pretty clearly in the discussion board when you press show replies. I want you to go ahead and read those comments. Most of them are pretty simple, like good job, but some of them give suggestions, and I want you to be reading the suggestions so that you can get better as the semester goes on. I gave everyone full credit for trying. Getting the wrong answer will not lose you points in the discussion board, but in your actual essay, if you have things that don't make sense, you will lose points. And there were a couple of you who are saying things that were a little bit off. Looks like maybe you didn't read the text all the way through. Next up is the reading quiz. So the reading quiz, once again, I gave everyone full credit for this essay question because the essay question was a little vague. What's a difference between analyzing the theme of a poem and analyzing the theme of a short story? I meant that to come from the reading directly, which gave a very specific answer for this, but I wasn't specific enough in my question, so I gave everyone full credit for trying on that one. But this week's reading quiz for discussion 3, this has a specific answer. Well, you just saw it if you're watching the video. So hopefully you watch the video all the way through, and then you get the answer. Okay, so that's another thing. Please go ahead and do the reading, though. Let's look at that reading, the Wiley Guide, analytical paragraphs. Okay, so once again, this reading does a great job of specifying exactly what's important. It uses bold font, it uses these little examples, and it uses these key points callouts that make it obvious what is important from the text. If you notice, I've annotated just slightly this text by highlighting certain portions of it. I strongly, strongly suggest you do this. It'll make coming back and referring to it later much easier. Now, I'm not giving you points for annotating like with the short story this week, but I do encourage you to annotate. So some important things from here. Analytical paragraphs have 3 components: the claim, the evidence, and the analysis. That is the answer to this week's reading quiz. Please watch the video. Please get the quiz right. But there's so much more to learn from this text. So a good analytical claim makes a point about something significant that is suggested or indirectly revealed by the text you're analyzing. So that's important. It's something that is suggested or indirectly revealed. It is not something that happens in the text. So you can't make a claim and say, in recitative, the short story read this week, Twyla feels insulted by Roberta. That's not something revealed or suggested by the text. That's just something that happens in the text. That's not good enough for a claim. That's just a statement of fact. Um, this is important. Use verbs in your claims that will tend to lead to analysis. So you want words like suggests, implies, reveals, represents, symbolizes. So if we want to talk about Twyla feeling insulted by Roberta, we could say that when Twyla feels insulted by Roberta, the text reveals that there is racial strife during the time that it was written, or something like that. Okay, so that's the key points about the claim. We move on to evidence. The key points about evidence are pretty clear. Evidence supports the claim. Only quote evidence that you're going to analyze, and keep evidence separate from the claim and the analysis. So the important there is only quote evidence you're going to analyze. Don't have a big long quote. You only need a line in order to analyze that, because you're only analyzing the specificity of that line. Finally, we have the analysis itself, which follows the evidence, and it should be the longest section of the paragraph. The analysis should repeat key terms from the claim. So if you have key terms in the claim, repeat those through, but it should develop the claim. It shouldn't just repeat what you've said in the claim. It has to develop it. Say why exactly the evidence helps the claim make sense. Okay, that's all for this reading. Hopefully you do it all the way through. Should help you out. As for that discussion board, it's right here. Write a claim about Toni Morrison's recitative, remembering that a claim should be something significant that is suggested or indirectly revealed by the text you're analyzing, not something obvious by summarizing the plot. So then I'm going to have you write the claim as a separate paragraph, and then write the analytical paragraph beginning with the claim that goes through and has the claim followed by evidence, which is a quote from the text, which you should introduce the quote from the text. Don't just have the quote after the claim. You have to say, in recitative, this is shown when, and then you could have the quote, but you have to introduce your quote, right? It's called a quote sandwich. This is something that hopefully some of you learned in high school. But the idea is when you have a quote, you introduce it by giving some context to where it happens in the story or the poem. Then you have the quote itself, and then you analyze the quote afterwards. But you have to make sure you have that top part where you start by introducing the quote, giving some context instead of just dropping the quote in. Okay, that's 200 words minimum, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, we have our reading quiz for this week, our annotations, and we have recitative. This, I think, is a really, really great short story that works a lot with ambiguity, which is things that are like unclear, productive ambiguity, things unclear leading to meaning. And it has a lot of really dense and rich themes that go throughout it. Of course, the story itself is two little girls who shared a room in an orphanage, even though they weren't orphans. And it then follows their life as they reconnect with each other. But it follows their life as the world develops through the 60s and 70s, through the, for instance, the rock and roll Jimi Hendrix era to all the way through like the school busing and integration era. And during these times, the relationship between these characters changes based upon the racial divisions in this country. And I think it's clear at least one theme is that interpersonal relationships are impacted by sociological conflict, and that it is difficult to remain close with someone when there are sociological or broader factors that interfere with the relationship. While this story ultimately ends on sort of a happy note where they're both empathizing with the same character and feeling the same thing, the strife and tension between them throughout the story implies that racial divisions, in Toni Morrison's eye, when this is written in 1983, are stronger than interpersonal bonds. That there's something about division in this country that makes it difficult to have friendships or connection across the racial divide. That's a really important theme, and one that, again, you can disagree or agree with, but you have to agree that it is what Toni Morrison is arguing with the text, that there is this challenge. There are obviously other themes throughout. You're going to create a claim based on this, one claim, which should be backing up a theme, right? So a claim helps to develop a theme, helps to make one specific argument about the theme. So if we're going with the theme that we were just talking about, you could find a piece of evidence and say that, that when blah, blah, blah happens, it shows or it signifies, or whatever one of those fancy words from the reading that we just looked at, this theme. So that's how claim works. Again, always send me an email if you have any questions after watching this video. I would love to see some analysis of the periodic nature of this, how you keep coming back to the character and things have changed so dramatically. I think that's a really cool way. The periodic nature is a really cool way to do this story instead of a through line plot. Oh, I meant to mention earlier, again, make sure your themes are complex and not just topics that the text is about. So I saw that a lot in the discussion boards, and I left it comments on your discussion boards to say like, hey, you're doing this wrong. But a lot of you picked out themes that were just topics or subjects, like racism. But a theme cannot be racism. That's just a subject or a topic. A theme is what the text says about racism. So in this story, or in Luella Brown, the theme might have been, or the subject might have been racism, but the theme is something greater, like, oh, I don't know, to make one up on the spot. The Bones of Luella Brown shows that racism lasts beyond a lifetime, and its stickiness has repercussions for people even after they're dead. Something. For this story, the theme might also be racism, but it has the subject might also be racism, but it has a very different theme. It's nothing to do with dead people. It's nothing to do with biological difference, right? The last story had a lot to do with biological difference. Like, can you tell between two skeletons? This story is more about interpersonal relationships. It's more about sociological factors. It's more about the periodic nature of our lives, how our lives are highlighted by specific moments, right? So dig into the theme is something the text is arguing about a subject, not just a subject alone. I will mark down on essays if you say the theme of this text was racism. That's incorrect. That's just the subject of the text. Okay, that's all I have on my list. Get this work done. If you have any questions about how to access stuff or questions about the text, send me an email, and maybe I'll respond to the whole class if it's a question that's relevant for everyone. All right, that's all. Enjoy the weather. Talk to you guys next week.